Hi, my name is Mrs. Childs. I am a library aide at the Mayville District Public Library, and today I will be reading two books. The first one is called Chickens to the Rescue by John Himmel. On Monday, Farmer Greenstock dropped his watch down the well. Chickens to the rescue! Those are some chickens, said Farmer Greenstock. On Tuesday, Mrs. Greenstock was too tired to make dinner. Chickens to the rescue! What dear chickens you are, said Mrs. Greenstock. On Wednesday, the dog ate Jeffrey Greenstock's book report that was due the next morning. Chickens to the rescue! Smart chickens, said Jeffrey Greenstock. On Thursday, Ernie the duck drove off with the farmer's truck. Chickens to the rescue! Quack, said Ernie. On Friday, a big wind blew Milky the cow into a tree. Chickens to the rescue! Meow, said Milky. On Saturday, the sheep wandered off and got lost. Chickens to the rescue! Bah, said the sheep. On Sunday, Emily Greenstock spilled her breakfast all over the floor. Big mess here. If anyone is listening, she said. The Greenstocks went out to the chicken coop. The chickens were fast asleep. Sleep well, said Emily. You've earned it. So now it's time for the pigs. The end. Amelia Bedelia's First Field Trip by Herman Parrish. Amelia Bedelia was so excited about her class field trip to Fairview Farm. We learned about farms in school, said Amelia Bedelia's teacher, Miss Edwards, and today we're on a real farm with real farmers. Say hello to Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins. Welcome to Fairview Farm, said Mr. Dinkins. I'll take you to see the animals, and then Mrs. Dinkins will show you her garden. She's got a green thumb. Now who wants to meet some chickens? We do, hollered the whole class. While everyone followed Mr. Dinkins to the chicken coop, Amelia Bedelia stood very still and looked at Mrs. Dinkins. She had never seen a green thumb before, and she wondered which hand it was on. What colors were the other fingers? Did Mrs. Dinkins have a pink pinky? Hey, daydreamer, called Mr. Dinkins. Shake a leg. Amelia Bedelia looked at her legs. Which one? She asked. Which one what? Said Mr. Dinkins. You said shake a leg, said Amelia Bedelia. Right, said Mr. Dinkins. So Amelia Bedelia shook her right leg and ran to catch up with her class. The big rooster perched on top of the chicken coop was making a racket. What a loudmouth, said Heather as she covered her ears. Roosters don't have mouths, said Amelia Bedelia. He is a loud beak. That's Max, and he is our alarm clock, said Mr. Dinkins as he poured cracked corn into a feeder. We go to bed with the chickens and wake up with Max. Amelia Bedelia was sure glad she didn't have to share her bed with chickens or a rooster. Mr. Dinkins showed everyone how to gather eggs. Some of the eggs were still warm. There were white eggs and brown eggs and speckled eggs and eggs the color of cream. Wow, said Holly. The eggs matched the chickens. Amelia Bedelia discovered an unusual egg. Look at this one, she said. The Easter Bunny must have left it. Amelia Bedelia, you crack me up, said Clay. Uh-oh, said Amelia Bedelia. I hope I don't do that to the eggs, too. Is it true, asked Miss Edwards, that if a chicken eats something green, like broccoli, she'll lay a green egg? Man, thought Amelia Bedelia, what if a chicken ate a grape? Or a tomato, or a candy cane? Actually, said Mr. Dinkins, the color of the eggshell depends on the type of chicken. What they eat makes the yolk lighter or darker. Our hens eat good things, so their yolks are bright yellow like the sun. The next stop was the dairy barn. This is Sunshine, my favorite cow, said Mr. Dinkins. Who'd like to milk her? Everyone took a turn milking Sunshine. It was tricky work. Nice shot, Wade, said Teddy, laughing. Said Sunshine. We have 20 dairy cows, 4 horses, a herd of goats, and a litter of pigs, said Mr. Dinkins as he led the class on a tour of the barnyard. Look, said Amelia Bedelia. That baby horse has a ponytail just like Rose. A baby horse is called a foal, said Miss Edwards. She's still learning to walk. Miss Edwards, said Mr. Dinkins, pointing at the baby goats, do your kids ever act like these kids? They sure do, said Miss Edwards, but only at recess. Here's our litter, said Mr. Dinkins. Amelia Bedelia didn't see any trash, just 10 piglets eating. Those little piggies went to lunch, said Penny. So should we, said Mr. Dinkins. Mrs. Dinkins was waiting for them under an enormous oak tree. She gave each student a chore to do, and soon everyone was helping to get lunch ready. Angel, Teddy, and Clay wiped down the picnic tables. Cliff, Daisy, and Dawn swept off the benches. Wade, Rose, and Heather folded napkins. Holly, Joy, and Penny filled the water glasses. Chip, Skip, and Pat passed out cheese and bread. Said Miss Edwards. Where is Amelia Bedelia? I asked her to toss the salad, said Mrs. Dinkins. Oh dear, said Miss Edwards. By the time Miss Edwards found Amelia Bedelia, the salad bowl was empty. Where did you toss the salad? Asked Miss Edwards. I tossed it all over, said Amelia Bedelia. Over there, and over there, and there, and there. After everyone had worked together to make a new salad, the class had lunch. Then Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins took them to the hay barn. They each got to sit on a real tractor, and they lined up to take turns on the rope swing. Guess who was brave enough to go first? Hey, look out, said Holly. Look out, hey, shouted Amelia Bedelia, landing in a big bouncy pile. Mr. Dinkins yawned. I'd like to hit the hay too, he said. Have a quick nap, dear, said Mrs. Dinkins. We'll go to the garden. On the way to the garden, Mrs. Dinkins told the class that potatoes sprout eyes, corn has ears, and lettuce grows a head. Her vegetables came to life for Amelia Bedelia. What was that? Chip asked. Mrs. Dinkins looked at what he had stepped on by mistake. That's a squash, she said. It is now, said Amelia Bedelia. It is totally squashed. While Chip cleaned his shoe, Mrs. Dinkins talked about plants. We make sure they get plenty of water and sunshine, she said. This year I planted all sorts of beans. String beans, lima beans, wax beans, scarlet runner beans, soybeans. Amelia Bedelia raised her hand. Do you grow jelly beans? She asked. Well, said Mrs. Dinkins, laughing, I've never tried to grow a jelly bean, but I'll show you how jelly grows. Follow me. Welcome to my berry patch, said Mrs. Dinkins. Help yourself. I picked the berries and cooked them down for jams and jellies. As Amelia Bedelia reached for a raspberry, she got snagged on thorns. When Mrs. Dinkins untangled her, Amelia Bedelia saw her thumbs. Mrs. Dinkins, she said, your thumbs aren't one bit green. Mrs. Dinkins smiled. If you're good at growing things, folks say you have a green thumb, but you've got to get your hands dirty first. Getting dirty sounded like great fun to Amelia Bedelia. Here, try these blueberries, said Mrs. Dinkins, but only pick the blue ones. If a blueberry is red, then it is green. Unripe berries can give you a tummy ache. How can a berry be blue, red, and green at the same time? Amelia Bedelia wondered. Thank you, she said, but I prefer strawberries. When they are red, they're great. It was a long and exciting day at Fairview Farm, but finally it was time to say goodbye. Will the bus be here soon? Asked Amelia Bedelia. Actually, said Miss Edwards, we'll be picked up in carpools. Goody, said Amelia Bedelia. I could use a swim. We're mighty glad you came to visit, said Mr. Dinkins. We have surprise souvenirs for each one of you. Mrs. Dinkins held out a handful of seeds. Plant these, she said. Water them well and give them lots of sunlight. Then one day you'll have pumpkins. Pumpkins! The class yelled. Hooray for Fairview Farm! The next day, Amelia Bedelia's class drew pictures for Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins. Miss Edwards wrote a thank you note, and they all signed it. Then they got busy planting their pumpkin seeds. They each have something they wrote. I loved to hit the hay. Your pony's tail is longer than mine. I wish I had 2 green thumbs. Do you really go to bed with the chickens? Everyone got a seed and a cup filled with soil. How deep should we plant it? Asked Judy. This deep, said Amelia Bedelia, plunging her thumb into the dirt. She dropped her seed in the hole she'd made and covered it up. The rest of the class did the same. Look, said Amelia Bedelia, I've got a brown thumb. That's a start, said Miss Edwards. I'm sure it will turn green in no time. And it certainly did. The end.